Hey everyone, welcome back to So Wizard Podcast Rundown of AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow our audience. We've been getting some great feedback on this series, and we really do appreciate all the kind words. There will be a slight programming change, but don't worry, you're still getting the videos. So Wizard patrons, over on Patreon of course, will now be getting the AFI countdown videos a full week early. After the week, the videos will be coming to the loyal listeners here, as always. But we appreciate the support the patrons give, so we wanted to give them a little bonus, a little early access. We appreciate all of the support from all of our listeners, no matter how you listen, helping us grow the podcast, YouTube, and everything else So Wizard. Anyway, let's get down to it. Number 87 on the list is 1957's 12 Angry Men. This movie is currently available on YouTube, free with ads. The ads are not really placed well. They might cut characters off mid-sentence, which kind of jars you out of the movie a little bit. So if you don't want to deal with the ads, you can get it for like $4 on Amazon as a rental, and the video quality is pretty good. If you don't want to spend the money, it's well worth watching on YouTube, and just click to skip when you can to get through the annoying ads. 12 Angry Men picks up at the tail end of a criminal hearing. It's the hottest day of the summer as the 12 jurors are sent to make their decision. The decision in question is if a teenage kid murdered his father or not. The frightened young man is shown only briefly while the jurors are on their way out of the courtroom into the jury's room. Unfortunately for the young man in question, 1957 was loaded with more prejudices and biases than most people have today. The kid that these 12 men might be sending to his death is Puerto Rican. That in itself is used as a point against him by the majority of the jurors, at least in the beginning. The 12 men go into the room, and they have light, jokey, kind of friendly attitudes. A lot of them are saying, let's make our decision, hurry up, I got things to do, I gotta go to a ball game, whatever. But the only one really weighing the gravity of the situation is the sole vote of not guilty. Since the jury is not unanimous, they're stuck in the small, cramped, sweltering room while they figure it out. The racial prejudices many of the men harbor are just the start as they begin to badger and belittle each other into trying to come to their side of the argument. Don't let the fact that this is an older movie in grainy black and white mono sound think that it's going to be boring. 12 Angry Men is absolutely enthralling. Reginald Rose, who wrote the original story and the film adaptation, was clearly a master of dialogue. The choices made right down to what could feel like the smallest detail are pitch perfect, realistic, and make the movie even more addictive to watch. The first decision to start the movie after the criminal proceedings still feels a little bold, even 6 decades later. The audience is given only the briefest glimpse at the suspect to make up their own minds. The audience gets to walk into the deliberation cold. We experience the case secondhand through the jurors as they peel back the layers of the case and actually reason through the evidence that was presented to them. We aren't stuck seeing it for the second time, and we aren't going in with preconceived notions. Each bit of information is dissected and reasoned through. The normal expectation here would be that they go through a sequence of evidence that they deem most as subjective or outright false, and they come up with a clear verdict of not guilty, and everyone celebrates that they defeated racism or something. But don't worry, I'm not spoiling this 60-plus-year-old movie for you. There are bits of information that convince some of the jurors of innocence. Some are left unconvinced, and the best part is, no pun intended with the black and white of the movie, in the gray area, the best writing takes place. Some of the jurors are unsure, but in the American legal system, it is the juror's job to make their judgment beyond a shadow of a doubt. We have a system that's innocent until proven guilty. Now, we don't need to jump on that and dissect that statement even anymore for the purposes of this video, so save the comments on what you think about our legal system. A black and white movie about 12 older men sitting in a room arguing does not sound incredibly interesting. Hopefully, I've convinced you by now that the writing is impeccable, so you're curious enough to watch it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean the movie is going to be visually interesting. Even after 20 minutes, I was already hooked in the story, but I still had my doubts on the visuals, and I was almost treating it like an audiobook. So I started to pay closer attention. The actors don't simply sit around a table taking turns reciting their lines in wooden ways. The camera has its own energy to it, and it really never stops moving. It's kind of contradictory to what you would think you're going to get. The actors move in and out of the frame as the camera pushes and pans, guiding you through the story in a way that feels like you're in the room, even if you, being the 13th person, wouldn't necessarily be moving that way in the tight space. The crew really had a handle on what they were doing to make this classic what it is. Now we absolutely must talk about the on-screen talent. A ton of these actors weren't known by name to me, but I recognized almost every single one of them. Distinct looks and distinct accents stand out in the movie as these subtle character traits define the era and the location. You get a really solid understanding of who these people are, despite the fact that they don't even have names. Robert Webber, Ed Begley, Martin Balsam, and Henry Fonda are just some of the actors. Obviously there would be 12, but these guys' performances really jumped out to me. The emotion and weight behind their performances when they get worked up is exquisite. Even the subtleties and lines that seem like filler at first set the stage and tell us who these men are. It seems even more impressive that we get a clear understanding for all 12 individuals in just 96 minutes. 12 Angry Men was released theatrically in April of 1957. It would be released internationally, but from what I found, not for some time after its release. It didn't even get the home video release until 2001 from what I read. This seems hard to believe, but I really couldn't find much evidence to refute it. The movie opened to rave critical reviews. Unfortunately, with the advent of color film and widescreen showcases around the time, audience attention was pulled in another direction, and 12 Angry Men was a financial flop. The movie would eventually be played on television so the general public could watch it in their homes. When this happened, it finally found its audience. It got its first roots going that would solidify it as one of the best movies of all time. While doing my research on the financials, I found budgets reported anywhere from $335,000 to $350,000. The only really solid box office figure I found was $576 from IMDb. That really seems like it can't be right, but there it is. TheNumber.com reported earnings of $2 million, but this was expanded to include home video, so probably for the life of the movie. Despite the lack of financial success, 12 Angry Men was nominated for 3 Oscars. It won another 17 awards and was nominated for 10 more on top of that. It is on countless best of or top movie lists. There has been attempts at recapturing the magic, but the 1957 version is the way to go. That's going to do it for 1957's 12 Angry Men, number 87 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition. Next week's movie is an Oliver Stone classic, 1986's Platoon. If you want early access to the video, jump over to Patreon, where you can get it a week early, along with multiple other bonus shows. Be sure to listen to So Wizard Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. As I mentioned, So Wizard Podcast can be found on Patreon, where you get a bunch of bonus content and more coming for as little as $1 a month. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments or leave us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. Thanks again.